Okay, picking up where we left off, we're on page 393 talking about web services, that layer that has to fit the hardware, operating system, and then the web layer, the web service layer. Next is going to be some sort of an e-commerce package. And again, I would, even if you're a web developer, I would not recommend you do this on your own. There are so many fantastic e-commerce packages out there, shopping cart packages and all this stuff. So basically, go to your hosting company or your cloud services and just pick one off the list. I'll take that e-commerce software package. Presto change press it. It does everything. It does, it builds, the shopping cart and picking the quantities, picking the submit. It'll step you through remember all those pieces where you did the selection identification and you picked and got quantity and you did your, the banking, your credit card and shipping. It does all that stuff for you. So no one's going to write their own shopping cart software anymore, just because there's too many of them out there that are dang good. Next thing to talk about, well, actually, before we get to this, the thing is kind of sort of missing from this discussion is I really kind of need a fat pipe. I need a really big fat pipe of the internet come into my website. So once again, now I'll admit that none of that is really relevant if you're going cloud or shared hosting or some third party hosting. Let them deal with that. But if you're doing it from your own business, you're probably going to need a separate dedicated internet connection just going into your website. You probably don't want to have that combined with your normal internet traffic. Just a word to the wise. Okay. So mobile, there's hardly any difference between the mobile hardware and software. I mean, essentially, the pieces are all there. It's just formatted to display slightly on a slightly smaller screen. That's it. Big whoop. Next, we talk about electronic payment. Before we get into that, we need to talk about what is a digital certificate. So a digital certificate is some way of saying, I know for certain that this came from a particular person because they have essentially electronically signed a document, email, a file, or a web. So I need some way of having proof that I am who I am. Now the problem is you can build what's called a self-signing certificate. I can go in and make a certificate my own and I sign it myself. The problem is if no one knows who you are, they have to trust you to say that, yes, okay, so John Smith has signed the certificate, but I don't know who John Smith is. So I haven't accomplished anything at all. What I need is it to be signed by someone I do trust. And so they have this thing called a certificate authority. So certificate authority is a company whose business is to create digital signatures for other people. Now, I've been through this process, and let me tell you, it's sort of like buying a car or a house. They ask you all sorts of good questions, who you are and where you are and all sorts of information. And they basically kind of do like a background check. I really don't know what all they do if you're just an individual. But I bet they do the same thing as like your credit check. And just like if you're buying a house or a car, they go through it quickly and find out if you're a worthwhile human being or not. So yeah, and so when they sign it, there's a bit of trust here. And it's called the chain of trust. If I trust them and they trust this third party, therefore I trust the third party. Okay, that's essentially how that works. All right. So, for example, my website has a certificate, but the certificate came from, not me, it came from my web hosting company. And so my web hosting company bought a certificate from a certificate authority. So I didn't actually get involved. They bought it from a certificate authority, installed it on my website, and therefore I have a certificate available for people. Okay, that's what that's all about. The next thing you need to talk about is the payment card industry security standards. Excuse me. I've mentioned several times, kind of in passing, that the U.S. does not have laws governing the storage and processing of credit card information. Now, almost all the rest of the civilized world has laws in place. If you're trying to do business in the European Union, you're going to be following their very good laws, and their laws are good. They're very similar to our laws for the health information, HIPAA laws, if you're in the health business, you know that health records, there is a law that says here's how you can store it and process it, and end-to-end encryption and blah 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 blah. You know, store security at rest and all the rest of these fancy terms. Well, we don't have that in the U.S., but we do have an industry consortium, the payment card industry, the PCI, that have these voluntary guidelines that you should follow. Now, to tell you the truth, they really aren't voluntary. I mean, you really need to do this. And then get their little seal. Remember the couple pages back there was a little PCI seal you can put on your website saying, yes, I follow all these rules? Yeah, that'd be kind of good. Okay. That's what that's all about. Okay. Secure socket layers. This is the technique that, remember we talked about the HTTPS. So I'm going to a website and I'm getting ready to buy something. And so when I get to the shopping cart, my web browser switches into the secure mode. Now you might ask, why isn't it in the secure mode at all times? Well, using secure socket layers actually slows things down because it encrypts things back and forth. And so you probably wouldn't need it if you're just browsing coffee makers. You know, I don't care. But as soon as I select one and start building a cart and I go to the payment part, I need to switch over to the secure side really quickly so I can enter my credit card number because I want that part of the conversation to be encrypted. So secure socket layers is I'm not going to go into the details of how it works. Essentially, what it is a way to encrypt traffic over the web. Okay, that's it. Now, so it's on top of the HTTP standard essentially. So if I'm doing normal web traffic, I just throw secure socket layers on top of that, and that way it gives me an awful lot better. Most of the time, it's kind of temporary. You set it up just to do a shopping cart, and then it breaks back down. There are websites where it's the S in HTTPS is present at all times. Okay. Electronic cash. You guys have probably heard of PayPal and Bitcoin, those kind of things. Where I don't really have a company out there. I just go through and do it. I'm not even sure exactly why this is in this section, but it's pretty cool. It talks about the differences between credit cards, charge cards, debit cards, and smart cards. There's a cool little chart here that basically says, here are the card types and what they do. What is a credit card? Well, credit card is I buy something up front, and then I have a choice on whether or not I want to pay for the whole thing or some minimum amount. So I get a statement once a month and I just pay. A charge card is essentially the same, but there's no preset spending limit. Okay, in other words, I basically can just do whatever I want, and most of the time I have to pay the whole thing off. So American Express used to be one of these, where yes, I could postpone paying it, but I had to pay the full amount at the end of the month. Okay. My MasterCard and Visa were charge cards. I could pay $50, the minimum, whatever the $50 was. A debit card comes out almost immediately, as if I went to the bank or an ATM. So I don't pay at the end of the month because it's already been taken out. A smart card, it really isn't another type of card. It's a physical change in the card. It has a little chip, and it provides slightly more secure than using a debit card. Because I stick my card into the machine, type in my PIN number and then pull the card out. And so the machine never stores it no longer needs to store everything about what I typed in. No, it doesn't need to store my credit card and the 3-digit number on the back of the credit card. It doesn't need to store my debit card and my PIN number. With the smart chip, it can just store, yes, it was confirmed. And so if somebody broke in to a smart card reader and downloaded the data from a smart card reader, it would provide them no useful information whatsoever. That's cool. That's why a lot of companies have been pressing to switch over to using smart cards rather than swipe cards. Instead of going up with a magnetic stripe, whoop, you stick your card in the device, do your transaction, and pull the card out. Okay, much, much more secure, although it's not a different type of card. Okay. Believe it or not, we're at the end of the book. There's one more topic that's not in the book that we need to kind of talk about because a lot of people haven't dealt with this before, and that is the merchant bank. Let's say, for example, that I want to go into business. I mentioned to you one of the first things you need to do when you decide to go into business is pick your business name, Get your domain name. Register in the state of Texas is pretty simple. In theory, there is not really a business license per se in the state of Texas. Okay, there really isn't one. But typically, you would go in and become a partnership, or most likely a limited liability corporation. That's probably the most logical way to do it. But again, we're kind of getting off topic. So I build a business, and basically I get a Social Security number equivalent for my business so I can pay taxes. I need to be able to collect sales tax information, and I need to be able to pay corporate taxes, those kind of things. So I need a tax number. So I don't really have a business license per se, but I do have a legal entity that I can use for paying taxes. Okay. Next thing I need is a merchant bank, because if I want to receive information from a credit card, let's say that you are, you're trying to sell Beanie Babies, and somebody walks up to your house and says, "Hey, I understand you got Beanie Babies to sell," and you go, "Yeah," and the guy says, "Here's my credit card." You look at the credit card and go, "What do you want me to do with this?" You need an agreement with a merchant bank and a little device that you can swipe the card through. Now, the merchant bank is the one that sets up these business kind of scenarios, and they're kind of expensive, and yes, they take their cut. And if they have different scales of them, I mean, you have ones that are designed for people who are just hobbyists, like, I'm only going to make a sale like once or twice a day, or maybe once or twice a week. They have, a category for that. And then you have, moderate business where I'm doing hundreds a day, and then you have big business for doing thousands a day. Anyway, you need to have an arrangement with the merchant bank, because when somebody walks up to your garage sale, that's a better example. Somebody walks up to your garage sale and says, "I want to buy that weed whacker. Here's my credit card." You need to be able to way to take money. Now, when you do that, and you have the machine, you swipe their card, and you don't get paid from your neighbor Bob who just bought your weed whacker. You get paid from your merchant bank. So, Bob to the merchant bank back to you. Now, that's how it's supposed to work. If there's a dispute, the merchant bank will typically just hold back your money. So Bob's been charged, $10 for the weed whacker, but you didn't get $10. You're waiting for it to get resolved. Okay, I think we've covered that. So we are at the end, and we'll see you guys again in some future chapter.